Hello everyone, and welcome to part 2 of the history of Magneto. Now, obviously having watched part 1, you would know that we left off with Magneto having spent some time as a member of the X-Men, as well as leading the New Mutants. However, by the end of it all, he realized that he could not adopt Professor Xavier's methods, and that Professor X's way was not his way, causing him to leave the group. Where exactly did he end up after that point? Well, you shall find out soon. Magneto next appeared in the Savage Land, where he met X-Man Rogue, where they both fought a crazed Zaladane, who had stolen the magnetic powers of both Polaris and Magneto. Zaladane was defeated brutally by Magneto. Rogue left the Savage Land in anger and in tears as Magneto declared that he and she could not be on the same side. Seeing conditions for mutants grow progressively more perilous, Magneto began seeking allies to protect mutants from humanity. He participated in the Acts of Vengeance alongside such established villains as Doctor Doom, the Wizard, and the Mandarin. He also confronted Red Skull, an unrepentant Nazi war criminal, on whom Magneto took revenge by entombing him alive. Eventually tired of the constant state of strife, Magneto built a new orbital base, Avalon, where he hoped to live a life of quiet seclusion. He was by this point a figurehead for the cause of mutant kind, and was sought out by a group of new mutants calling themselves the Acolytes. After this, Magneto set his sights significantly lower than world conquest. He wanted only a haven for mutant kind. He first attempted to make the orbital base known as Asteroid M such a haven, but was opposed by the governments of the world and the X-Men. The X-Men did not know whether or not Magneto was returning to his villainous ways, so they confronted him. Feeling betrayed by his former allies, Magneto escaped after a brief skirmish in which he sustained near-fatal injuries from Wolverine. Shortly after, Magneto renewed his war with the human race and the X-Men, and gathered about him his team of mutant underlings, the Acolytes, who virtually worshipped him. The United States Security Council, in response to a resurgent Magneto, voted to activate the Magneto Protocols, a satellite network in slightly lower orbit than Avalon, which skewed the Earth's magnetic field enough to prevent Magneto from using his powers within and from returning to the planet's surface. The attempt to limit him was met with an electromagnetic pulse wave that not only destroyed the satellites, but deactivated every electronic device on Earth within minutes. Xavier and a select team of X-Men traveled to Magneto's orbiting Avalon base to confront him. During the battle, Magneto used his powers to extract the adamantium from Wolverine's skeleton, causing him tremendous agony. Infuriated, Xavier used his mental powers to shut down Magneto's mind. For a time, the Acolytes cared for Magneto at their orbiting base, and Exodus claimed to speak the word of Magneto even while Magnus was incapacitated. When Avalon was destroyed by Holocaust, however, Magneto returned to Earth in an escape pod with Colossus. Subsequently, an amnesiac man emerged calling himself Joseph, possessing powers over magnetism and the appearance of Magneto if he was still in his 20s. He joined the X-Men, who believed him to be Magneto, somehow rejuvenated and reformed. Joseph himself came to believe he was Magneto until the real Magneto reappeared and began his campaign of terror against the human race anew. It was at this time that Sabra, a mutant Mossad agent and member of Xavier's Underground, discovered that Eric Lenscher the Gypsy was a complete forgery, and she revealed this information to Gabriel Haller. Sabra would declare a personal war against Magneto, whom she now regarded as a traitor to the human race, mutant kind, and their Jewish people. After seizing control of the planet's magnetosphere from the North Magnetic Pole and blackmailing the world into creating a mutant nation, the United Nations ceded to Magneto the island nation of Genosha, which had no recognized government, as a homeland for mutants. At this time, however, Magneto had nearly lost and exhausted his powers by influencing the poles. Magneto was met with armed resistance on Genosha. He used Fabian Cortez and then Polaris to augment his powers, and was able to gain control of all parts of Genosha. After battling the Avengers and destroying the city of Carrion Cove, hidden in caves above Carrion Cove was a device that Magneto knew would restore his powers to dangerous levels, and he attacked his alleged children, Wanda and Pietro, who tried to stop him from using it. Once he accessed this genetic enhancer, he regained his powers over the electromagnetic spectrum, but the overwhelming energies drove him psychotic and manic once again. After the legacy virus was cured, Magneto suddenly found himself with tens of thousands of healthy mutants on Genosha, who sought to raise an army from this mass of disaffected, recently cured mutants. Jean Grey formed an interim X-Men team that was barely able to stop him. Wolverine again struck a critical blow, gutting Magneto and reportedly severing his spine. Magneto, recovering and ironically wheelchair-bound, was attended to by Polaris. She had always had a Magneto father fixation, and now she stole what she thought was a tissue sample of Magneto's, had it genetically cross-matched with a sample of her own, and discovered that she was actually Magneto's biological daughter. When new Mega Sentinels attacked Genosha, Magneto was still wheelchair-bound and suffering from his injuries to the point that he could not effectively use his powers. It appeared that he was killed in the attack, but in truth, he survived after he was hidden in a shelter by his followers. Months after the event, a team of X-Men searching in the debris found what was apparently a recording of Magneto's last words. Mutant supremacist ideas attributed to him became widespread in the mutant community, with some holding him as a martyr of the mutant cause. Magneto had become a Che Guevara-like revolutionary figure in the mutant community. T-shirts and posters with Magneto's face and the phrase "Magneto was right" became popular items, even amongst certain students in the Xavier Institute. Around this time, an imposter by the name of Zorn emerged and wreaked havoc in New York City in the guise of Magneto. All the while, Magneto gradually found his way out of the Genoshan rubble, and somehow survived until he was apparently contacted by Xavier. Magneto had no memory of what happened to him, from the time the Mega Sentinels attacked to the time Xavier contacted him. With the world again thinking Magneto was dead, as Wolverine had beheaded the Magneto imposter in New York, Xavier and Magneto decided to work together to help rebuild Genosha, rekindling their friendship in the process. Magneto's daughter, the Scarlet Witch, lost her grip on reality following a reminder of the death of her children and attacked her fellow Avengers, causing the Avengers to be disassembled and forcing a distraught and remorseful Magneto to come to her aid after she was rendered unconscious by Doctor Strange. In Genosha, Magneto had heard Wanda's psychic cry for help, and using a wormhole whisked her away before the Avengers could stop him. Back in Genosha, Magneto tended to a more withdrawn and angry Wanda, and allowed only Xavier to visit in the belief that Xavier could help mend Wanda's broken psyche. As Magneto was forced to consider euthanizing his own daughter for the good of the entire world, as her reality-altering powers were spinning out of her control, Pietro convinced his sister to use her powers to create a world wherein they would have everything they wanted. In the new reality Wanda created, mutants were the dominant species on Earth, and Magneto was the sovereign of the world's mutants, ruling his subjects from Genosha. Magneto had been granted dominion in this realm after revealing an alleged international anti-mutant conspiracy involving Richard Nixon in 1979. Believing Magneto to be the one responsible for the change in their world, a group of heroes who had their memories of the real world restored by Layla Miller banded together and attacked Magneto in Genosha. During the battle that ensued, Layla was fortunate enough to be able to restore Magneto's memories, as she had done for the others. When Magneto found out about Pietro's role in warping reality, he attacked him, enraged at all that he had done in his name, and killed him by ultimately crushing his body under the weight of a sentinel. Driven mad by anger and grief over Magneto's treatment of her brother and his violence towards his children, Wanda blamed her father for what Pietro and she had become, declaring that he had always loved mutant kind more than his own children, and so, out of spite, she altered reality once more, declaring no more mutants. At her command, the mutant population of Earth had been decimated, and if not for Doctor Strange and Emma Frost, there would have been no mutants left at all. Magneto was left powerless, along with most of the world's mutant population, and with no more mutant births, the species that Magneto had dedicated his life to fighting for was headed towards extinction. The X-Men left him amidst the ruins of Genosha, a broken and shell-shocked man. When Quicksilver came to Genosha to restore the mutants' powers with the Inhumans' Terrigen Mist, Magneto condemned his actions, pointing out the disastrous effects the mists had on non-Inhumans. An angry Quicksilver, frustrated at never being able to win what he believed to be his father's approval, attacked Magneto with his new powers gained from the mists, savagely beating him until his daughter Luna begged him to stop. When the Inhumans later came looking for their mists, Magneto told them what had happened. Thereafter, the Collective, a being comprised of energy from all the former mutants' powers, repowered Magneto and revealed itself as Zorn, the imposter who had devastated New York. Zorn explained that he took the image of Magneto because he knew mutants would follow him, but they needed the true Magneto once again. Magneto, not in control of himself, began attacking the new Avengers and S.H.I.E.L.D. agents that Zorn nearly destroyed while he pleaded for them to kill him. He was taken down with a direct attack to his brain from Inhuman S.H.I.E.L.D. agent Daisy Johnson. Iron Man, Miss Marvel, and the Sentry combined their powers and sent the Collective Zorn into the sun. Michael was separated from the Collective, and an unconscious Magneto was loaded into the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicopter. The helicopter, however, exploded upon takeoff through unknown means. His body was not found among the rubble. Afterward, Magneto was being searched for by the US government, the Morlocks, and the X-Men. Professor Xavier was unable to locate Magneto with Cerebro despite the increase in power to his recently restored telepathy. Xavier and Nightcrawler found traces of Magneto paying his respects at a local graveyard, standing in front of a tombstone belonging to one of his very first henchmen. Also, the Morlocks came after Magneto for reasons of their own and used him to justify their terrorist acts. Magneto spoke to a crippled, depowered Morlock, claiming he had lost what once made him superior, implying that the restoration of his powers by the Collective was indeed temporary. However, when Skids found him at a local cemetery sometime later, she gave him a mysterious book that Mask had in his possession. It claimed to chronicle the future of mutant kind, and in it, the book stated Magneto was still a mutant. Apparently, at the behest of Exodus, Magneto appeared to help restore the broken psyche of Professor Xavier. He claimed that he was still powerless while he reminisced about the past between the X-Men and the Brotherhood with Omega Sentinel. Together, they managed to revive Xavier before being attacked by Frenzy. Magneto wounded Frenzy by firing a medical laser into one of her eyes, prompting Exodus to ask what punishment he would have instilled on a human who injured a mutant. As the Acolytes considered him a human, Exodus even claimed that Magneto was dead and that Lensha was just a shell that was left over. Magneto replied death, and Exodus proceeded to choke him with his telekinesis before Xavier challenged Exodus on the astral plane. After Xavier defeated Exodus, he left Magneto and Karima to try and rebuild his lost memories. Magneto re-emerged in San Francisco, his powers artificially recreated by a suit designed by the High Evolutionary. He reactivated Sentinels to attack the X-Men at a mutant quiche event in San Francisco. The attack itself was a distraction, so the High Evolutionary could gain an unknown object from the Dreaming Celestial, in order to further a shared goal between Magneto and the High Evolutionary. After extensively examining the Dreaming Celestial, the High Evolutionary subjected Magneto to an extremely dangerous technological procedure in an attempt to restore his powers, which succeeded. Since the Evolutionary's equipment was destroyed in the process of repowering Magneto, he could not use the process to reverse the decimation effect. Magneto then traveled into space to find another way of saving mutant kind, but to no avail. Shortly after the funeral of Dr. Yuriko Takiguchi on Utopia, previously known as Asteroid M, Magneto confronted the new inhabitants of his former home. Magneto stunned everyone by telling them he had come in peace and wished to speak with Cyclops. Professor Xavier was unconvinced, believing the entire ruse to be a trap, and attacked him telepathically. In spite of this, Magneto did not fight back. Instead, he got down on his knees and repeated his peaceful intentions. Cyclops ordered Xavier to stand down and agreed to talk with Magneto, but kept Psylocke close by in case Xavier was right. Magneto expressed his admiration to Cyclops for finally doing what he and Xavier couldn't, uniting mutant kind. Magneto feared that mutant kind was doomed until Cyclops told him that Hope Summers, the mutant messiah, was alive and well. In order to gain the X-Men's trust, Magneto brought Kitty Pryde back to Earth, cracking the bullet and bringing Kitty out of it. Because of the duration and severe intensity of using his powers, Magneto was rendered comatose. During an attack from Bastion on the X-Men, Magneto came out of his coma and defended the many inhabitants from the Nimrods. With his reputation around the world as a well-known mutant evolutionary / terrorist, Magneto was talked into finding a solution to the problem by Cyclops before it could go public that he was a resident of Utopia. Kate Kildare, a superhuman public relations specialist, advised him to adopt a costume color scheme containing white, along with getting the public to love and fear him, both of which he refused. With an earthquake inbound for San Francisco, Magneto used his powers to stabilize the city's buildings, structures, and metal vehicles, and to smooth the earth movements themselves, thus preventing any major damage and saving many lives. As a result, the city began to favor him. In the aftermath of the schism between Cyclops and Wolverine, Magneto took Cyclops' side and joined his extinction team. When footage was released of Magneto murdering several anti-mutant activists, Magneto was surprised as he was miles away with Cyclops while the massacre was perpetrated. They were then called into a meeting with Captain America and Iron Man to discuss it, and Cyclops vouched for him, giving Magneto a chance to prove his innocence. The real perpetrator was a resurrected Joseph who had been brought back by Astra, along with a new Brotherhood of Evil Mutants composed of deformed clones of the originals. Joseph sought to bring back the fear that Magneto's name once commanded, and allied himself with anti-mutant activist Christopher Bark, who wished to sully Magneto's name and make mutants appear more dangerous to further his agenda. Joseph berated Magneto for allying himself with the X-Men and going soft, which Magneto countered by saying that he was doing what he always had, fighting for the survival of the mutant race by any means necessary. Magneto kidnapped Astra and forced her to reveal Joseph's plans, which were to kill all people at a pro-humanity rally. Magneto arrived in time to thwart Joseph's plans and save the people. He killed all the clones and incapacitated Joseph, who was then locked in the X-Brig. However, Christopher Bark was killed by Magneto during the chaos, who pretended not to know what happened to him. When war broke out between the X-Men and the Avengers over what to do about the Phoenix Force coming to Earth, Magneto sided with his fellow X-Men against the Avengers. When the Avengers invaded Utopia, he fought Iron Man, and the two took their fight to outer space. As Magneto drew power from another planet, he sensed the planet being destroyed by the Phoenix, which distracted him long enough for Iron Man to defeat him. The X-Men feigned a surrender and proceeded to teleport out of Utopia. Magneto waited in a safe house with Storm and Psylocke while Cyclops, Emma Frost, Colossus, Magik, and Namor engaged the Avengers on the moon. After Iron Man used an experimental weapon on the Phoenix Force, it split into 5 pieces, inhabiting the 5 X-Men present on the moon. The Phoenix Five used their vast power to end wars, hunger, disease, and thirst on the Earth, and created a global utopia. The Avengers continued to oppose them, believing that the Five would eventually lose control. The Avengers managed to defeat Namor after he had invaded Wakanda, resulting in his portion of the Phoenix going to the other 4. Later, Colossus and Magik knocked each other out after having a falling out, manipulated by a beaten Spider-Man, resulting in Cyclops and Emma as the last 2 Phoenixes left. After receiving all that power, Cyclops and Emma began to lose control. Emma began a reign of tyranny over the X-Men, threatening those whose thoughts displeased her. Magneto attempted to reason with her to no avail. Magneto then called out to Professor X, telling him they needed his help. The Avengers, Xavier, and the X-Men united to take on the Phoenixes. Magneto participated in the battle, but when Cyclops took the final piece of the Phoenix from Emma and became Dark Phoenix, he was knocked out. Cyclops was defeated by both Hope Summers and Magneto's daughter Wanda, and Hope dispersed the Phoenix and used it to re-spark mutations around the globe. Despite aiding the X-Men and the Avengers against Cyclops and Emma, Magneto became a fugitive, like the other members of the former Extinction team, but managed to remain hidden due to Abigail Brand's aid. He made contact with Cyclops and asked if he should break him out, but Cyclops refused the idea. He then went on to find some of the former members of the Extinction team, Magik and Danger. He tracked Colossus down as well, but decided that it would be best to leave him alone due to his suffering for his sister's betrayal. He informed Storm of Colossus's whereabouts, leaving his fate up to her. He, Magik, and Danger received a message from Cyclops to break him out and head towards the jail. They succeeded in breaking Cyclops out, and together they set out to protect the New Mutants. Magneto, Cyclops, and Magik began liberating mutants who had been unjustly imprisoned by various authorities and offer them help with controlling their powers and joining their rebellion. While attempting to liberate Emma Frost, Magneto and Cyclops discovered they had both lost control of their powers. Emma revealed that she's been going through a similar situation, and told them that the Phoenix had altered their mutant powers. As Magneto protested, saying that he wasn't a host, Emma told him that since Cyclops hit him with a heavy dose of Phoenix energy, he was also affected. Cyclops vowed to find a way to fix them all. After Emma joined, they started a new school for mutants in the old Weapon X facility. Magneto also pretended to serve as a disgruntled informer for S.H.I.E.L.D., but it turned out to be an attempt by him to infiltrate the organization. Magneto later left Cyclops' X-Men and used his intelligence, resources, and contacts to track down various anti-mutant hate crimes and make sure that those responsible paid for their sins. During one of his quests, he discovered a group of mutant growth hormone traffickers, and after killing them, he abducted their scientist in order to perfect his MGH formula to restore his powers. After discovering that the Red Skull turned the remains of Genosha into a mutant concentration camp, Magneto tried to infiltrate it and take down the villain. However, he was captured by the Skull's S-Men. After being rescued by some of the mutant members of the Avengers Unity Division, which had previously been abducted to Genosha, Magneto managed to kill the Red Skull. However, the villain reappeared shortly after, combined with Onslaught. The Avengers, the X-Men, and their allies later arrived to help fight the Red Onslaught after his existence was discovered. However, the Red Onslaught soon deployed his own variant of Sentinels made specifically to combat superheroes. Because of this, Magneto left the battle to recruit an army of supervillains to defeat the robots and the Red Skull. In order to finally stop the Red Onslaught, the Scarlet Witch and Doctor Doom performed a spell to invert the axis of his mind, which accidentally affected everyone in the island, turning heroes into villains and vice versa. When the Scarlet Witch set out to have revenge on Doctor Doom for having manipulated her, Magneto and Quicksilver tried to stop her. During the fight, the Scarlet Witch cast a spell meant for those with blood ties to her. To his surprise, Magneto wasn't affected by it, discovering he had no blood ties with whom he believed to be his daughter and her twin brother. When Doctor Doom returned with the resurrected Dr. Voodoo, they used Voodoo's brother Daniel to possess Wanda so they could cast a reinversion spell. When the reinversion spell was cast, Magneto returned to his normal personality. After the events of World War Hate, Magneto found himself the leader of a band of mutant refugees on Genosha, who had just escaped the mutant concentration camps built by the Red Skull on the island. He caught the attention of S.H.I.E.L.D. and surrendered to the authorities only to heavily damage the helicarrier from the inside and delete the agency's files on mutants. Magneto was approached by Namor, who told him of the incursions, an event in which two alternate universes collide with each universe's Earth as the point of impact. Namor was preparing to betray the Cabal and told Magneto about the incursions because he believed that Magneto would do whatever possible to stop them. Magneto contacted his daughter Polaris to help him deal with the incursions. In a move that stunned Polaris, he stole his daughter's powers in order to be strong enough to push the other world away during the final incursion. However, Magneto's attempt failed, and losing control of the immense forces at work, he simply disintegrated. The incursion wasn't stopped in the end, causing the two worlds to collide and destroy the universe. And thus ends the story of Magneto, at least up to that point, because as I've mentioned in previous episodes, this is where I am ending the history stories. It is all ending with Secret Wars 2015, so I won't be addressing anything that happens after that point. But in any case, I really hope that you guys enjoyed this episode, and I will see you guys in the next episode whenever you decide to tune in next. I hope to hear from you guys soon, and until then, have a good one.